Hey everyone, this is Mr. Barnett, and this is a walkthrough video for the Demographer Challenge Level 1, which is an introduction to modeling. Below the title, I have the 5 learning objectives for this lesson, and what a learning objective is these are the things that you're meant to learn by completing this level of the challenge. And so by the end of this level, you should be able to identify functions, find domain and range, graph a function, understand function notation, and then interpret functions as mathematical models. And once you feel like you can confidently do these 5 things, you'll be ready to finish the level, demonstrate your mastery of them, and move on. What I'll do in this video is just explain to you, kind of give you an overview of the level of the learning objectives, and then tell you how you can practice them and build your own skills. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So functions. Right? What are functions? Well, this project in some ways is all about functions. And we generally make these mathematical models, right? These mathematical prediction tools using something called a function. A function is sort of like a machine, and you'll hear me make that analogy, that a function, we take an input. Here our input is a value of x, and x is a variable. It could be any number, right? We could put in 100, we could put in -1/2. Here our input is 3. We're going to put it into the function machine. The function, which we'll generally call f, but we can call it other things as well, is going to take our input x and make it x squared. Okay, and the output, f of x, is going to equal 9. We took 3 into the machine, we squared it, and we get out 9. One thing to know for a function is that each input has one and only one output. So if we put in a certain number into the function, there's only one thing we can possibly get out. We can't put in 3 as an input and get 4 or 6 or 10. There's only one output that we can get for each input. In this case, we input 3, we got 9. Two other things we need to know about functions. The first is called the domain. And the domain is the set of all the inputs that go into the function. So here, one input was 3, but if we also put in 4, got 4 squared equals 16, then 4 would also be a member of the domain. The domain are all the inputs, all the x values. And then the outputs, f of x, or sometimes that will be considered a y value, is called the range. So if you hear domain, you're thinking inputs x values. Range is outputs y values. How do we represent a function? A function is just a concept, right? But we make it real by representing it, by putting it on paper. Well, there are 3 different ways to do this. The first is with an equation like this that you just saw. Y equals x squared. That's an equation. We can also make a table of values. So if I took a bunch of inputs, this here on the left is the domain, right? The inputs, the x values, and I put them each into the function, I would get y values, or a range, right? -3 squared, 9. -2 squared, 4. -1 squared, 1. Remember, by the way, that a negative times a negative equals a positive. So I get all these points. And then the next thing I can do is I can put them onto a graph. So notice here, I've taken each point, x and y, and put it on the graph. This is the point, -3, 9 in the top left corner. Moving down, I have -2, 4. Moving down, I have -1, 1, and so on and so on. And when I connect those points, I get a graphical representation of a function. One thing this allows me to do, by the way, if I want to say, what's 2.5 squared? Well, if my x is 2.5, it'll be somewhere between 4 and 9. I'll look on the graph, I'll say 2.5 squared. That's going to be about 6.25. And that's actually right. 2.5 squared is 6.25. So these are 3 ways of representing functions. Okay? And the last thing that you're going to get to practice here in this level is function notation, where we say that y equals f of x. And what this means pretty much is I put x into the function and I get out a y value. For instance, f of 1, I'm just putting 1 into the function. F of 1 equals 1 squared, that equals 1. F of negative 2 equals negative 2 squared, and that equals 4. And I can find these points on the graph, right? 1 and 1, negative 2 and 4. Good. So this is a general understanding of functions. What should you do now to build your skills and understanding of these concepts? Well, first, just answer a few introductory questions about changing populations. Remember that every level here is connected to our overall project of understanding population change, so this is going to get you in that frame of mind. Next, you're going to have the chance to build skills using 2 tools. The first is I've put some videos on a website called Edpuzzle for you. You'll notice those are explanations of the content and they're interactive, so I think they'll be a good way for you to learn the content. And there's also practice assignments on Khan Academy. You'll see those in the document for this level. And I recommend you do this practice. Some of the best ways to build skills in math is by practicing with problems. Once you've done that, I want you to take some notes on what you've learned, and I've given you the questions I want you to be able to answer. Then you're going to take what you've learned and apply it to your project, to your population. You're going to identify the domain and range for your own population, and then plot some points on a graph. So in other words, take your data that you collected in the past level and put it onto a graph. You'll review your work with your teacher, and then finally complete your self-assessment survey. And just as a reminder, through all of this, if you have questions, ask, right? Ask your classmates, ask your teacher, look online. The responsibility for learning here is on you. The resources are to help you learn as much and as quickly as you can, and I hope that you will take advantage of them. Good luck.